audience talks. So now is the time for the audience, and you can have questions or comments based on what we discussed tonight. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or comments, please, yeah, go, yeah. We have a mic here so everybody can hear you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I live here in Central Avenue, and I appreciate what you're saying about the need to get things done. But I think these things can only happen in a context. And I think they're happening in a very bad context. And my idea is this. The United States has an extraordinarily wealthy economy, and it's based on being very nimble and changing things all the time to maximize profit, maximize extraction, et cetera. And that leaves a lot of people in some really bad and terrible situations. And I think it's ethically incumbent upon us to make part of that economy taking care of the people that the way we operate our economy disadvantages. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to maximize all this profit that we can swap on a dime and do this, that, and the other thing, we need to take care of all the people that get disenfranchised from the economic benefits of that kind of a society. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think what should happen is, yes, we need all these nuts and bolts issues, but I think they need a much better sort of planning and understanding and reevaluation to make sure that our economy functions because we have all of these people who all do all these separate things at different times. If they're useful today and not useful tomorrow, mm-hmm. You get those people who go and do a 4-year degree in nursing, for example, and when there was demand in nursing, and then when they graduate, there's no jobs, and they have a student loan and et cetera, then they find themselves homeless. What is that?
Yeah.
So I think we owe a lot to the people who find themselves in the short stick of the way we operate our finances here.
So what does that look like?
Oh, for me, I think that we need a much higher tax rate.
Okay.
But that includes.
Oh, you don't watch out. You might get.
No, but I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it wouldn't be that high though. It wouldn't need to be that high if everybody paid their share and did the things they needed to do, because being poor is bloody expensive. It costs so much more to do everything when you're poor. It costs a lot more to do things when you don't have the resources. Yeah. And we're talking now about having a short-term gain by playing a tariff tantrum or something. How about having a little bit of short-term pain to reevaluate the economy in such a way that as we keep on changing our economic processes and we move different ways, that we don't leave people behind. A lot of that wealth that's made, just take a small little bit of it. It doesn't take a whole lot, given the money we're making, to make sure that everybody that's left behind has time to retool, to reevaluate, to have housing until they figure out what they're doing, to have the ways to to reassess their careers and to find new places and new usefulness. A quick example: when they shut down a factory in I think it was Denmark. An American was involved in shutting down this factory, and he's expecting riots and all kinds of nonsense. And when he got there, everyone was helping him shut it down because they knew that they're going to be covered until the next job came along, that they would be retrained, that the government would take care of them until the next job and opportunity came along. And that was part of what they paid their taxes for. And they're a lot happier.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have to get people to buy into that idea, right? I mean, right? Yeah, and that's the difficult part. That's the difficult part, to help people see that it takes all of us.
Yeah, but if you want a workforce, if they say no one wants to work, but you need to have a home, a phone number, a wardrobe, and right, well, you've got to invest in that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah. That's how I say it. You can't expect a mechanic to work on a car without a set of tools. You can't expect a company to operate without its employees. Well, you can't expect people to be able to work without having basic needs met. It's just not right.
Right. No, yes. I knew you were going to say something first. I knew it. I was watching you the whole time. I knew it. You were ready to go. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, so I have lived in Florida as well as living in Orlando, living in different areas. Also, I'm a licensed massage therapist, and I went down to Florida after the hurricanes for crisis care. So where that comes in is seeing what FEMA did, what the local governments did, what the local community did to help the people that were displaced, to help the people. And it's people of all walks of life. A storm comes around, it doesn't just pick and choose. It's like, oh, we're just going to get these people over here. No, it was people all walks of life were unhomed and displaced. All of a sudden, their cars floating down the street and flooded out. So it was really remarkable seeing everyone come together, the community, the government, just people setting up in their local community as well. I was really impressed by that. And the point and what I'm trying to make here is that if community comes together so quickly in tragic events like that, why can't we just put that together now in this because the whole world has changed, especially since 2020. And with technology, with a lot of other things. And so all of those are barriers to people staying homed within their home or homelessness and just how everything works. So we have to take all that into understanding and have a lot of compassion that anyone can be unhoused and unhomed through any circumstance. So if we take that into consideration and also study what happens in the big storms like that, how everybody comes together and how quickly, and then also the phasing out of programs so that people get back on their feet, so the community starts to care for itself and people are starting to care for themselves. I think we could grow and learn from that and implement much quicker.
Yeah. I appreciate what you said in regards to technology and electronics. I think about when I was researching and kind of looking into this, there's a large population of older adults, right, who also are going through that, right? And I think about, how technology has grown. And if you are, in your seasoned part of your life, right, and you don't know how to use different electronics or know the kind of, what's current, you may not be the person that they're going to hire, right? And then, you're on a fixed income and then you can't afford. And then if you don't have community, you're on the street. I mean, that's a real thing that's happening. So I really appreciate you saying that part too. And again, you're coming from a very compassionate, empathetic space. One thing that I learned a long time ago was that I had to learn how to get people who thought differently to understand what I meant from their perspective. Right? Because a lot of this talk today is coming from a very, empathetic, compassionate space. But one thing, so I was in a class and it's my old pastor. I had to do a paper. I'll tell you this really quick. I had to do a paper and I wrote this paper and I was really proud of myself for writing this paper. And I turned it into him and he read it and he ripped it up. And I was not very happy, okay? Because was really proud of myself. And he told me to write it like I was talking to an 11-year-old. So I wrote it again. I had to write that paper like 6 different times. 85-year-old to this age demographic. And what that taught me, and I keep that lesson to this day, is that we have to understand that everybody will not see it from our perspective. So for you to be able to make change, we have to come to be able to tell that person how it will benefit them, how it will help them, how it will help their community, not from our lens, but from their lens, right? And so sometimes we have to kind of look at it a different way to be able to actually ignite change, right? So I just want to share that because I feel have a big heart, right? But everybody doesn't care, right? So how do you get them to buy into this or understand your position from a different perspective? And that's one thing that I try to do even with this work, to be able to connect with a person where they are. Somebody said that meeting people where they are, that's a real thing, right? So, because you have a big heart, you went down there and helped out. Everybody doesn't care like that. So how do we get them to understand that people are people? And for us to love them in a certain way, we have to connect with that person from their perspective, not from ours, right? So thank you. Anybody else want to? Yeah, yes. We're going to, yeah. Hey. Okay. Sorry, just so everybody can hear you.
I was homeless for 3 years and I lived in the tent during the winter, the fall, the rain. And I was to the bottom of my life. I had a knife to my neck and a friend talked me out of it. And the very next day I was still depressed. Tracy walked through the woods with a halo of the sun around her. I'm serious, walking through the woods, she came out and there was like a halo. She gave me the resources and ever since then my life has been wonderful, except for health-wise. But the reason a lot of people go homeless is because they have guilt. They think they're no good because of how they were raised. They don't have money to get their IDs. They ask people, can I borrow some? They go panhandling, but then they're hungry. Where do you think they
Yes,
spend their
tissue.
money? They'd rather spend it on food. When I was homeless, that dumpster right across the street is where I got my food. And my clothes.
Oh, yeah.
I got my Section 8. And the landlord I went to go look for an apartment, he said, well, you're not homeless. You don't look it. My response to him was, what does homeless look like? Everybody has a different story. I did mine because of guilt. I was ashamed of what I did. But I lost everything, and then sitting in jail, it was looking at the bunk, and the roots were just strangling me. And that's when I decided I had to make a change for me. And you have to learn to love yourself before you can go any further.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Oh.
We've had 6 homeless people walk by these windows.
Sadie.
Yeah, there's homeless people that were just walking by, and I know them. I wanted to go grab them and tell them, come on in. There's some restaurants I just found out that give free food.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. There's a restaurant that will hire the homeless and give them cash. There's so much out there. People look at us. I still say I'm homeless because I was. They look down on us like we're nothing. And you really have to have faith in that person. And Tracy had so much faith in me. And I had to fight for what I wanted.
Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for telling that story. And, you know, we all need people that are going to care about us and love on us. And I think one thing that you said that was so important, too, was that you made a choice for yourself as well, right? You had that support, somebody to help you, and you made a choice. And, I mean, look how beautiful that is. So thank you so much, Tracy, for being there for people in this community. So, no, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for sharing, and you did it for yourself and for everybody here.
Yes, yeah, sure.
And Tracy, what is your job? Do you have a special job, or are you an angel that's down here?
Are you an angel that came down from above?
I myself
Yeah.
am legally disabled. I'm currently sheltered, unsheltered, and live in a camper.
Okay, so you just
I have mental health disorders. I'm neurodivergent and in recovery and trying to get my life back. I will never, unfortunately, be able to work again, so I've devoted myself to helping my neighbor.
well, fabulous. That's very nice.
Yeah, I spent 30 years in the public sector working for the school district.
Yeah.
So I love people, period. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, another thing I was thinking about when we're talking about the homeless is the children. So the homeless
Yeah.
people and their children.
Yeah, we didn't even get to that.
We got to help them train their children, or the schools can't do all that. So there's lots of work we need to do. That's for sure. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Ann.
Anything. Because without the ID, they can't get health insurance. There's my friend, Dave. He was diagnosed. He lived in the tent right next to me. He was diagnosed with breast cancer on his or prostate cancer on his birthday. And without Tracy, Courtney, Dream Center, us giving him the love and support, he's alive today.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It goes back to kind of what you talked about, Nicole, in your interview, that, you know, being out in those stressful situations just kind of exasperates it even more so. And then if you don't have a permanent residence, right, to be able to provide proof of that, you don't get the help. So you do need people that are going to help out in those situations. Yes, please.
Okay, so just talking about the children, that's kind of what I've been thinking about. So my dad was homeless growing up, and he doesn't talk about it a lot because he carries a lot of shame from that. But one thing he mentions a lot is how when he was going through, when he was transitioning to high school, he was put into a gifted program, but he didn't have a typewriter at home or any resources because he didn't have a home. And so he was held back in school, and he really struggled in high school because he couldn't complete his work and he couldn't complete a lot of his assignments, even though he fully had the ability and the want to do so. But it was through somebody who found my dad on the street one day and actually took him in and decided to, he was a wealthy man within the neighborhood, and put my dad to work and let him mow his lawn for money and to use his typewriter. And my dad was able to complete high school and go to law school and do really incredible things. And it's just those really small opportunities. And that's just something, that's kind of scary to think about, is if those opportunities aren't presented, how much are we losing?
Yeah. Ooh, y'all trying to make me cry tonight. Oh my goodness.
Can I kind of comment on that?
I know.
Can I?
Yeah.
So
No, please,
I think that's a great story,
Thank you for
and I
sharing.
think a
Yeah.
lot of times though it's stories like that that hold a lot of other people back from helping. Right? It's like, well, look at all of the things that got in the way to success, and yet he became very successful. Right? And everybody loves that story. Everybody loves the pulled yourself up from the bootstraps and made something of your life when you came from nothing story. And so I think those stories sometimes hurt the conversation, because they're like, no, look at how bad this was, and this person made it. They did it. Why can't everybody do that? And so it stops the conversations around other things. And it's not the right conversation to have. It's certainly the wrong narrative, but it's definitely what happens.
People have, and you know what I find interesting, because I always love that pull your self up by the bootstraps, and I know people have that. I mean, people talk about that all the time. And one thing I guess that stood out to me in the story that Madeline just shared was that her father did not have the bootstraps, right? Somebody gave them to him, and I think that's the part of the story that is so powerful, was that someone saw that opportunity to help because they had the resources, right? And I think it goes back to if we have it, I mean, because like I said, I can go back to talking about dogs, okay? Just dogs. I mean, other pets too, but dogs, people will shelter them and take them in, and the community will come together, and one will get a, doggy house, the other one will bring bones or something. I don't know. I'm not a dog person, so I don't know all the stuff that they have, but right? So everybody will bring stuff in together. So I think that's part of the story. To me, that was powerful, was that it seemed like someone saw a need and filled it, right? And then with that, he was then able to empower himself and then continue on, right? But it took that one interjection of like, hey, I want to help you, right? And so I didn't know that part about your dad's story, Madeline. Thank you for sharing that. And her dad, she didn't say this, but her dad helps so many people now to this day. He works at CMU, and he helps young people visualize and actually execute their dreams as well. So it's really like a full circle moment with him that he's able to now give back like someone gave to him. So I think that's pretty cool.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
I think as a community also, just experience from working at a shelter is working with the school system for the children. And so I know we're pretty connected with one of the elementary school that our kids go to. And so if they ever have an issue, they can call us, and of course with release of information and all that, but just being connected with the school and having them understand where these children are coming from. Not that they need a special treatment, but we talk about trauma informed all the time, and just having understanding where they're coming from, and their behavior isn't because they want to behave this way. There's so much more and all that. So just having that connection with schools is so important. And then another thing is there's another program called McKinney-Vento. So, we have families that come from Bay City to Midland or wherever, and McKinney-Vento is a school program that can access funding for the child to stay in a school where they came from, so that that's not another norm that they have to uproot. Whatever. My mind is going everywhere.
It's late.
Yeah.
We're almost done.
Yeah. So basically, it's their norm, right? The school that they came from, and so why pull them out of that school when that's what they know, the teachers and everything. So just knowing the resources regarding the school system is so important for these children too.
Yeah. No. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think something that's also really important in the conversation of youth is talking about LGBTQ plus and trans youth and how they are affected by homelessness and being unhoused individuals, because they are affected at alarming rates. I think that something that we also didn't touch on in this conversation is Black and brown people and how systematic barriers have continued and will continue to affect them when it comes to housing and barriers to housing. And that is a very long and intensive conversation that could
Yeah.
take up 2
Yeah,
hours in
we only have
itself.
2 hours. I know we can't.
But I think that it's just important to also make
Yeah.
note that those are also things that are impacting people.
Right.
Thank you. Yep.
If I can briefly add, that was something that I wanted to mention as well, because we had kind of this conversation about, hey, this is a really empathetic group, and I really appreciate your playing devil's advocate, but I think we need more empathy. And I can't necessarily speak for kids who are actively unhoused right now. I know that we have a lot of high needs kids in the Bay City Public District specifically. I mean, my sister's 5th grade class, out of 20 kids, they had 3 parents that had passed away in a year span during COVID. There's just so much stress on our kids these days. And then on top of that, I can speak to, I have friends that are LGBTQ plus, they are just out of high school, and they're like hiding who they are out of fear that their parents are going to disown them for that, because their economic bottom line is at risk. And I think that we have this kind of position that we're in where we tend to lack empathy and focus on that economic aspect, because so many people's livelihood is tied to things that they can't control, and that systemic piece is huge as well, because you kind of get that bootstrap thing where there's people who are set a little bit ahead, and they might not be doing well either, but their perspective is, hey, well, I'm doing well, and they don't always recognize those underlying things that hold people back because of generational wealth that they had that other people don't. And I think that conversation, that lack of empathy is what kind of creates that disparity of understanding.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I will always be a person that advocates for empathy, right? And I also am a person that tries to talk to all different type of people, and I understand that some people. There was a gentleman I spoke to that he believes that empathy is a sign of weakness, right? And so when you're talking to someone like that, telling them to have more empathy.
I think the first thing you do is you have empathy for where they're probably coming from,
Sure.
and the stresses that they've had in their life. So
Yeah.
I think I think sometimes people out of a push for empathy or out of an empathetic place, they get frustrated, right? And then they might not become the most empathetic person themselves. But I think kind of going back to that understanding and saying, hey, you're in a place that I don't see as productive, but I understand how you got there. And,
Sure.
and I think just being more honest and having those discussions, I think we lost that, and my generation specifically lost that during COVID. We lost so much of that communication aspect, and I think people are just now getting back to having these discussions and being willing to speak up and speak out. So I really appreciate you facilitating this discussion.
No, this is great. This is great. I love this kind of stuff. Thank you so much. And I want to go back to Matthew's point, and we'll go to the next audience question. But because I don't want to seem like I'm dismissing that, because I think that is a real conversation that people have, and people will make assumptions if someone is well off, right? They assume that they came from this life of all these privileges. And I know for a fact, I'll use the example of someone that I know, Renee Decro. She owns Live Oak. I mean, Live Oaks are in all these communities, and to look at her, right? People will look at her, and then she's this blonde hair, little, cute lady with this beautiful family, and they're doing all, have all these businesses, and people just think that she just was handed this. She grew up, and she tells a story, so I'm not telling a story that she hasn't told, but they had it rough, right? And she worked her tail off. Her and her husband worked together to build what they have. So everybody, is not just handed things, right? And I think that's to your point, Matthew. I want to make sure I address that some people do feel like they got through the mud, right, to make it, and they feel like everybody should do that. And we know that's not always the case, right? But people do have that perception. So thank you for bringing that up too, and thank you, Mason, for what you said.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, and then we're going to get back to the community. Yeah, go for it.
So I see people as an investment, and if we're going to look at why should we help, and people being about self-preservation, that's the biggest reason. If we set up a network that helps people and they find themselves in that situation, because it's not a matter of if, it's when, then yeah, it's there, and it will help them when they need it. And even if it's not a long-term solution, just say it's a year. In a year, you get paid back what you need to build a house again if you've lost it in a flood. You need time, and people don't have time when things happen and they have no plan or their plan falls through. There's no time, and then they're in that situation. So I think our biggest investment in any community is our individuals in that community and, building a structure for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you so much.
So I don't have a question. The talk just sparked something in my mind. So I stay in Flint, Michigan. So we have a guy that's homeless and a real nice guy, nice gentleman. He never asks for money. People just give him money. So he walks around downtown all the time. And I think it was the lady over here. She said homelessness looks different on everyone. So I recently found out that the guy, he's homeless, but they had built some new lofts downtown. And somebody got him a new loft, put him in there. He left and went back to the streets. And everybody was like, why did you go back? He said, I don't feel right because my sister died in a fire in her apartment. And he just can't stay in the apartment. He has to stay outside because that makes him feel better. So this conversation just sparked that. And I'm like, man, how do we help him? I don't know what that looks like, but I was just like, she said, it looks different on people.
Yeah.
So that just sparked that with me, and I just wanted to share it.
No, I appreciate that. Wow.
Can I touch on that?
Sure, please.
Survivor guilt is incredibly real. So when we were saved, I guess, and got put in a hotel room right before the polar vortex hit, we knew that there were at least 10 other families in that parking lot that did not get helped, and they were going to continue being in their vehicle when it hit. And it was like 40 to 60 below. Wind chills, I worried about all of them. And I went through that like the entire month, even with the crisis that I was in. I was telling like Renee at the open door, I don't believe that I deserve to be in here and they deserve to be out there. And so that is a real thing that you really do struggle with when you've been outdoors for so long. And it's not that you don't want to be in there, it's that you build a community out there and they didn't get the help and you did, and you don't know how to deal with that.
No, I appreciate that perspective. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yep.
I had a comment too, because one thing people didn't touch on, it's not always a matter of people being heartless in terms of like the homeless population. Sometimes, it's a deal where people have certain experiences. When I lived in Detroit, we had a line where, we had homeless people in a certain section, but many of the homeless, we caught them, breaking into people's homes, robbing people. Some of them would ask for money and panhandle, then you see them take the money and go right down to the dope house down the street. So when you come up seeing this, sometimes in your community, you start looking at it a different way. You know what I mean? It's not always people don't want to help, but when you start seeing stuff time over time, you start putting the label in. All the people may not be like that, but some people live like that, so it kind of causes a divide in the community, because it's like, man, what you doing in my backyard at 12 o'clock in the morning? It's hard to bring that love and empathy and all that type of stuff when, these same people victimizing you. And that's not all of them, but it does happen sometimes.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that perspective. I think all of our experiences shape us. I think all of our experiences create a narrative within us. And, and one thing I was talking to someone in preparation for this, and make sure I say this right. In communities where people have lived more sheltered and have not seen the different things that go on in larger cities, it is so easy for us to say, oh, we should just do this. We should just do that. And if you haven't ever been robbed, if you haven't ever experienced the other side of things, it's really easy for us to kind of vilify people that come in with a skewed thought process, right? When you've seen different sides of things, it is easy for us to just say, it just would be so easy to do this. And sometimes when people have experienced different disparities and different experiences, you see it, you can see it differently. And I don't believe in generalizing anybody, right? Any community, any group of people. But we do know that our experiences do shape our narratives. And unless we, maybe venture outside of that or explore different things, talk to different people, we will stay in that silo. So, any other community questions? Yeah. Let's Judy, real quick. Yep.
This is a simplistic way to think, I'm sure. But to me, I have heard several people say that not having an ID is a barrier. An ID is dignity. That means you are a person. You are recognized in the state that you live in the community that you live in. Why on earth is that a barrier? Why is an ID not just...
Talk to your county and city clerk about that.
No, Matthew, let Matthew.
We have legislation to make it free.
Yeah.
We do have legislation right now to make it free. Even if we do that, there will be barriers. There's transportation barriers. There's,
Right.
There's proof of who you are barriers, right? Like if you don't have your birth certificate, where do you get it? How do you get it? But there is legislation to make state ID free.
Okay.
Because everybody should have it. You need
Right.
it for everything we do. You have to have it.
Yeah. Oh, that got people buzzing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I will say there also is initiatives like Genesee County has the option where when you're released from their county jail, you reentry, you're allowed to then obtain an ID for free. So it really is sometimes advocating to your local elected officials, whether they're county commissioners or if they're county clerks, city clerks, talking with them and saying, hey, this is a need for our community. People are saying that we need IDs and we need them to be free. How can we get that to happen? And if you pester the clerk, and I hate to say it like that, but if you do have conversations and get enough people and rally them around that idea, you can really start to see that policy transform your community.
Yeah, and doesn't that go back to like the whole community conversation, like that whole? Because I mean, I think what like the barriers even after you get the free ID is transportation, right? How do you get there? And then if people have, if they do have their own gas, I mean, there's so many different things to be able to do these things, right? If you have small children, does somebody watch your kid? Because we know daycare is super expensive, and we're not going to talk about the free daycare going away, right? Maybe. So we won't get into that. That's a whole nother conversation. But so who watches the children? Like, do you take them with you? So it's just so many different variables of that. So thanks for bringing. Yeah.
Like that, I don't know. That just seems like stuff.
Yeah.
So that if you somebody's working with you, somebody is advocating, trying to walk beside you and help you. The people that are on this panel, you're the one, other people are going to have to walk beside someone who is homeless and do this kind of thing and help them go through this process. You can't expect them to do it alone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what that answer is.
Yeah.
But
community.
Isn't it
That's what you are trying to do.
In order
Yep.
to get an ID, though, you have to have a birth certificate
Right.
And an address.
and address, and so,
You don't need an address.
You don't need an address
You don't
technically.
need an
You
address.
can put like a street corner where you live or multiple other things.
Because you
So
can register to vote from
Yeah.
a street corner to claim your jurisdiction.
Well,
but I'm just saying, a lot of the clients I work
what's
with,
this? Everybody.
they don't have birth certificates, so we have to go through getting the birth certificate first. And then, or if you don't have Social Security card, but you don't have an ID, now you have to have an ID first before you can get a Social Security card. And it just, in that sense, I feel like the system is broken in that sense, where how we obtain an ID, an actual ID. You have to have this, and that kind of thing.
I think this goes back to that discussion about, making government work for people. And that kind of falls on the policymakers to make the big decisions, and because then you get that distrust. It's like, why is it like that? Why is it so bureaucratic? And then that's kind of where that stems from. If it looks like there's all these barriers for this thing that seems very simple.
Yeah.
So I think we need to work on that.
And community, right? And I've been advocating for somebody to give our organization a bus. If you guys give me a bus, we will help people get around, right? So if anybody has a bus that they want to give to us, I'm ready. Anybody else in the audience? Just like, okay.
Hi, I'm from Saginaw County. I work with veterans experiencing homelessness and at risk of homelessness. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity to have this village come together. There's a lot of opportunities out there for programming and services that people just don't know about. So I just want to say thank you for bringing awareness.
Oh no, thank you. Yeah, and that's and I really meant to reach out to people to bring some literature if they have it, because there are a lot of ways to help. There are a lot of people out there doing this work. It's just, and I think that's when I spoke with Nicole, a lot of that is getting people to the information, right, and letting them know it's available, or letting them know that there's a dream center or like something, things of that nature, to be able to get the resources to be able to get the help. So. Thank you for what you do. Because we talked about that to the veteran population, that also, which is, I don't know, that frustrates me, right? Because I don't want to serve. I'm so happy for the people that serve. I stay in my lane, and I appreciate them for their sacrifice. And I don't think that any veteran should worry about anything, quite honestly, after what they do. But that's thank you. No, okay. Hold on real quick. Go ahead.
So I had a couple of questions, well, a few. When we were talking about the school system and children, is that something that at the beginning of the school year, do they send out information just with each child so that their parents could fill out information if they're having housing issues? Or is that something that they find out after the fact, by word of mouth, or just talking to a child that comes and then they find out they're homeless? Are they doing something to be proactive?
No.
In that?
I can stop you there. A lot of times it is one CPS involved. And and that goes back to even the conversation about government aid. I remember when we were going through that period of our life, and you fill out these things of how much money you make and blah blah blah, and then what they would do is you would get this bag of old stuff, right? It would be somebody's beans that's been in their cupboard for umpteen amount of years. It starts to this color, and you get this bag, and then the child would have to walk up to the office to pick up this bag. Everybody knew what the bag was, right? So then that comes with its own stereotype and hardship. And so I'm rambling, but I just remember that being just so distasteful, in my opinion, to children that are in need. And so for what I saw, there was never a proactiveness. Okay, it was always either CPS or some type of intervention after the fact, with the giving Christmas tree thing and all that stuff, but everybody would then know you're the child that doesn't have anything, right? So,
yeah. I guess one of the things I was wondering if they just did it across the board, I don't know, a letter or something, something for people to fill out if they were in that situation. So obviously they're not doing that.
Well, it's a lot of shame. I mean, I don't want to talk, but it's a lot of shame surrounding that, right? People don't want to advertise that they struggle because people have it. You want to add something?
There's actually fear too with the CPS thing.
Yep.
Parents aren't gonna willingly say, "Hey, I'm not providing for my child." They want them to go to school so that they're guaranteed at least 2 meals, maybe only one, that they're safe while they're there, hopefully, and that they're with their friends and kind of maintaining some kind of normalcy.
Well, wait, I'm sorry. We're gonna get to somebody else, and we'll be back. You guys can talk afterwards and have a whole conversation. Let's get somebody else. So we have somebody with the mic there, and then we'll ask you, what have you. Yeah.
I was gonna say first, being in the nonprofit world for over 17 years now. No, the information is not proactively given unless you are in a destitute situation, which is unfortunate. And I'm going to say on the opposite side, being in the nonprofit sector, we as a community of that piece of it, we have to share information freely and openly and not make it so difficult. It is a lot of red tape. I've worked in workforce development. I'm working now at a medical facility that's our community that we serve. And so no, it's not readily available. It seems like without shaming the child. And then you have to make sure that information is connected to that parent. And that's where the disconnect happens, is that the information is not getting to the parent the way they need to. And then you need to explain it to them once they get it, if they actually get to that point. So if we can figure out that system, I think that would help the community navigate this as a whole. Yeah. We were in that situation at one point in time before we got to that point. And when I tell you some of the things that was told to me.
Oh, people say anything. Yes.
you and your husband live together, make sure he leaves, and then you'll get all the resources that you need. And we were trying to do the right thing. So I won't get on my soapbox. I'll leave it there.
No, I appreciate that. That's a real thing, and I didn't even get into that part of it, right? That is such a rabbit hole that we can go down. Yes. But gatekeeping information has got to stop. Right? The gatekeeping has got to stop. If we have it and we have the information, we need to help people, period, in my opinion. But
my only comment was I was in school district for a good portion of my career, and it really wasn't a uniform thing where you could say, yes, they did, or no, they didn't have that information and do what they could to meet the needs of families. Even within one school district, I worked in a building where the principal was incredibly in tuned to the students and the families in her building. And she would track down free and reduced lunch forms like, a detective, to the point where she would not put it in a kid's book bag and hope it made it home. She would know those families well enough that she'd get in her car in the morning and drive, around talking to families about what they needed. 2.5 miles down the road at another elementary school, they handled things very, very differently. So there isn't sort of like this one size fits all. It should be that way, but you talk about the people here who have empathy, that goes everywhere. So I worked for a principal who had empathy. 2 miles down the road, those folks did not.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. One thing I remember, and then we'll get one last comment back here. I remember children, when I worked in the schools, the children who didn't have the money to pay for the lunch, they would get like this cold cheese sandwich. I'll never forget that. Everybody else would have hot food. It would look like a smorgasbord. And then the child whose parents couldn't afford to feed them while they were at school would get this cold. The cheese wasn't even we all like a good melted cheese sandwich, right? With the grilled cheese. It was cold, and they get like a little apple or something. That was it. And I just remember that, and everybody knew what that meant, right? And the public shame has got to stop. Anyway, one last comment back here, and then we're done for the night.
First of all, thank you for bringing us all together to talk about these things, because this is where the village begins. We take these conversations out and do the things we should do or want to do. But I'm a truancy officer for Saginaw Public Schools. I have all elementary schools, and as we're talking about things that happen and things that we see and things that are going on, as one truancy officer, my job, though, yes, is to get the kids to school, first and foremost. But if you dig deeper and you peel the onions back and you see that it's beyond the kids, it's the parents. So I'm building resources to provide to our parents so they can come in and get different resources, different help. All of our elementary schools, we have washer and dryers in our school. These are things that I want our parents to know so they can come wash clothes, or discreetly if they want to do so, or they can come in and wash the clothes. It doesn't matter. But these are the resources that we, and everyone who's sitting in this room, I'm sure, we hold some piece of resource or something that we can reach out to help someone else. Again, being gatekeepers, but let's share those resources. And elementary schools, high schools, all of it, but let's share those resources so our parents can get out and get the help that they need.
Empowering. I appreciate this. This has been a really great conversation. I truly appreciate it. And as we close, I just really appreciate everyone that came out tonight and shared their stories. And, hopefully this will plant a seed somewhere where we all can understand that we all are in this together, right? We all are in this together. I remember when I used to work with children, I believe in empathy, of course, and compassion, but I also was a straight shooter with my kids because I knew the kids that I worked with were transitional. They were soon going to be going out into the world. Right? At 17 years old, we expect them to be these full grown adults that know what they're supposed to be doing. I worked at the juvenile care center, and there was this idea that once they went out and they transitioned out, they were just supposed to know what to do. And a lot of them would end up committing the same crimes or doing things out of necessity, right? That their parents did, because we did not equip them to be in the world. So I held them accountable. So I say that to say that I believe in empathy, being there for people, but also being honest, right? We have some responsibility for our own lives, and we do have to give them the resources, but people also have to self-empower to say, you know what, I want to take these resources and do something, with my life. And we all can help with that as a community. I'm going to close this and say I want to thank each of you, of course, for showing up, not just in body, but in heart. Conversations like these are not meant to provide quick solutions, but rather to plant seeds that encourage personal and collective growth. Homelessness isn't just about housing, it's about humanity. And the more we remember that, the more capable we become of creating lasting, compassionate change. The ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we go as we are and not to be questioned. Maya Angelou said that. We sometimes think that poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for is the greatest poverty of all. So my reflective questions that I will leave you with is, what assumptions do I carry about people unhoused or needing government assistance? And where did those beliefs come from? And what can I personally do, however small, to contribute to a more compassionate and connected community? I appreciate you all tonight. We're going to have our MC close very quickly, and then we will finish out.
All right, let's give a round of applause for tonight's conversation. Very thought-provoking. Look inside and find the answers for sure. Don't miss out on the next stop. That's going to be at Saginaw at the Historic Castle Museum.
Yes.
So that's going to be amazing. Please make sure you come and bring someone with you. We like this thing to really grow. Absolutely. And we want to just thank you guys. First of all, so you give yourselves a hand.
Our audience,
because
yay.
our audience, we can't do it without you. We can sit here by ourselves, but we want to do more than that for sure. We also want to thank our partners, the foundations, the Bay Area Community Foundation. We want to thank Delta College for letting us use this beautiful venue for sure. And we want to thank the Breaking Bad Village team, because they work very, very hard to put this thing together, and so they make it look effortless. So please give them a hand as well.
Danielle, really quick. I want to let you guys, I advertised that we were going to have a baked potato bar and salad bar tonight. Delta College lost power today, so they were not able to cook it. So I did not lie. They did not lie. There was something that happened because of wind. And so we are grateful that they were able to act quickly to make sure we had something to eat tonight. So for y'all that need to eat, diabetics or people to take medicine, you all were still able to do that. So thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you all for doing that. Go ahead.
Yes. And lastly, we want to thank our panelists.
Yes.
You guys were phenomenal. And we appreciate your views and your transparency. And don't forget your gifts at the table. And once again, thank you all for coming out. Don't miss the next one at the Castle Museum. You better be there.
Thank you all so much. Have a good night. Drive safe. Thank you all so much. Thank you.